Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, man. Slavery. What's up? What's up? That gotta be my guy. Health is wealth. Let's talk about it, man. Let's have a talk from the past. Let's talk about 400 years of slavery right here on the soil. Let's talk about it. I want to hear from you. Health is wealth. And this is how we become healthy. What up, Mello? Let's talk about 400 years of oppression by the opposition. The one that took us from Liberia, Nigeria, from those lands, Burkina Faso, from those lands, Africa. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how the Atlantic slave trade is still affecting us today in America with systemic racism and a lot more injustices. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how brutal it was, how bad it was. This ain't the correct nothing. This is just to give my people and to let my people know the dark side of America and how bad it was for your ancestors that was here. Let's talk about it. It was brutal. 400 years. It was one of the most beautiful, not beautiful, but brutal, devastating tragedies known to man. It was a disaster. Some even call it Mahatma. It was so bad. It was so bad. It was so brutal. Slavery was so brutal here in America. You look to your slave master. That's master. He was your owner. A slave came with instructions. Mm,
The enslavement of Africans was a complex historical event that spanned centuries. European powers, driven by economic greed and racist ideologies, established trading posts along the African coast. They exploited existing power dynamics and conflicts between African groups, often exchanging goods for captives who were then transported across the Atlantic. This system was brutal and dehumanizing, causing immense suffering. Is there anything else you'd like to know about this period?
Now we have to talk about this from time to time to let you know of your past. June 19th went past, and a lot of y'all just thinking June 19th, not giving it up for the ancestors, for the people that came before you and laid down their life so that you could live a better life. Oftentimes, an artist is depicted of suffering in their drawings and suffering so we could see something great. Our ancestors suffered so we could live in a great way. The land of the free, the home of the brave. We celebrate Juneteenth. We celebrate June 19th. And we forget our ancestors that put it on their backs, that came through the mud, that got it out the mud. We put it in the song, we got it out. We ain't got nothing out of the mud. Our ancestors got it out of the mud. We ain't got nothing out of the mud. I got it out the mud, this and this. Yeah, I trapped. You know, that wasn't nothing. Slavery by the opposition, by the oppressor for 400 years, it was bad. It was devastating. It was the dark past and the hidden past of America. It was very devastating, very brutal. A lot of y'all don't like to talk about it. I talk about it as a reminder so we don't go back that way, so that we move forth. And let you know how to celebrate June 19th. That's your Independence Day. You celebrate the 4th of July. Why you celebrate it? Because it's fun to celebrate? Because they're popping fireworks? Those fireworks mean something different to the ones that know.
Fireworks are a common way to celebrate Juneteenth, but their meaning can be complex. While they symbolize freedom and joy for some, for
Hush it
others,
up.
they might evoke.
I'm not talking about fireworks for Juneteenth. I'm talking about fireworks for the 4th of July. That means something different to them. That means something different when
The
they
4th
lighten
of
up that
July
sky.
celebrates.
You hush it up. You listen. I'm talking right now. Slavery was brutal. It was bad. But we got to talk about it. I got to remind you what your ancestors did. You talk about you got it out the mud. Let me find one of them rappers talking about they got it out the mud. You ain't got out the mud. You ain't got nothing out the mud.
I understand your point about the importance.
Hush it up. Slavery was brutal. It was
I understand you're
400 years
passionate
of
about this
you.
topic, but I'm not
Shut
sure
up.
what you'd like to discuss further. Could you clarify your question?
Slavery, it was 400 years, right?
The transatlantic slave trade lasted for about 400 years, from the 15th to the 19th century. During that time, millions of Africans were forcibly transported to the Americas and enslaved.
It's not easy to talk about.
I understand that this is a difficult topic. It's important to remember that slavery was a brutal and dehumanizing system, but it's also important to acknowledge the strength and resilience of those who survived it.
They got it out the mud. That's what you call getting it out the mud. Which one of you rappers talk about you got it out the mud? Y'all don't pay homage enough. Y'all don't pay homage enough. A slave came with instructions. A slave was sold at the chopping block. A slave was sold on the stoop. A slave was inhumane. Kind
The
of
conditions
body
of
you know
slavery were
that come with
absolutely.
instructions. A slave was advertised. What year did they advertise the slave in the newspaper? What was the name of the newspaper at the Jamestown River that they advertised, come buy your slave?
It's true that advertisements for enslaved people were common in colonial newspapers. These ads often described the person's physical appearance, skills, and even their personality, as if they were selling an object rather than a human being. The Virginia Gazette is one example of a newspaper that published such ads.
Men was raped and their manhood was taken. Their wives was taken. Their daughters was taken and took it to different plantations and raped and beaten into physical labor, hard work, physical labor. They got it out the sun. They got it out the mud. They got it out the water. They put that thing up on their back. Which one of y'all
The
rappers
separation
did
of
that?
families was a.
Y'all
I
rappers ain't
understand your
telling it. Y'all
frustration.
cap. Y'all cap out here. Slaves was what was real. Shooting and killing your own kind. Y'all
I
don't.
understand your frustration with. I hear you.
Shut
It's
up!
frustrating when music glorifies violence, especially considering the historical context of violence against Black people. Is there anything else you'd like to
Slavery
discuss?
was 400 years. It was brutal. What was the Emancipation Proclamation all about? Who was against slavery? Who abolished slavery? Which party was against slavery? Was it the Democrats or was it the Republicans? Or was it the Democrat Republican Party or was it the Federal Party?
The Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 during the Civil War. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be freed. The Republican Party was the main political force behind the abolition of slavery.
How did Prince Whipple buy his freedom back?
Prince Whipple was enslaved, but he petitioned for his freedom. He argued that it was hypocritical for colonists to fight for their own freedom while denying it to others. He was eventually freed after serving in the Revolutionary War. Would you like to learn more about his story?
That's what you call getting it out the mud. Prince Whipple got it out the mud. None of y'all rappers never did that. What did Prince Whipple go on to do once he regained his freedom?
After gaining his freedom, Prince Whipple became a prominent voice in the abolitionist movement. He worked to end slavery and ensure equal rights for Black Americans. Would you like to learn more about his
Slaving
activism?
was so devastated. What did the Easterns call it?
The word slavery has different translations in Eastern languages. In Arabic, it's often called rik, and in Mandarin Chinese, it's called nuliji. Would you like to know more about the history of slavery in Eastern countries?
Adams. Man, let's talk about it.
I can't find any information on what.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how many brutal years this went on. I need y'all to understand the totality. The totality. Year after year, 10,000 after 10,000, voyage after voyage, millions after millions.
The transatlantic slave trade lasted for about 400 years, from the 15th to the 19th century. It involved the forced transportation of millions of enslaved Africans to the Americas. It's estimated that around 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported, but only about 10.7 million survived the journey. The conditions on these ships were brutal, with overcrowding, disease, and starvation being rampant.
Man, these are some cold souls. These are some cold souls. People.
The people who profited from the slave trade often treated enslaved people as property rather than human beings. This dehumanization allowed them to justify the brutal and inhumane treatment of enslaved people.
People defecating on themselves, urinating and using the bathroom on themselves, losing bodily fluids, all in these ships. The stench and the smell.
The conditions on slave ships were absolutely.
South Carolina, one of the biggest plantations. Down in Georgia, down in the Mississippi, down in the Delta. They docked them in.
The Mississippi Delta region.
Right at Jamestown River, down in Virginia, deep in the backwoods. The blood still cry from the Mississippi. It's very potent down there. New York City had plenty slaves. How bad was New York City with slaves?
Slavery in New York City was a brutal and complex system. It wasn't as widespread as in the South, but it was still a significant part of the city's economy and social structure. Enslaved people in New York City faced harsh conditions, including physical abuse, forced labor, and the constant threat of being separated from their families. Would you like to know more about the lives of enslaved people in New York City?
Yeah. New York City had slaves. And y'all call it the land of the free. Y'all call it the free state. They was up there getting their kicked. They know what it was.
New York was not a free state. I understand.
Delaware, y'all call that a free state. Delaware had slaves.
Delaware was a slave state, but it did have a large free black population. It was also the first state to ratify the Constitution.
They
And it
had to
played a
be
key role.
slaves first. They didn't come over here free.
That's right. The first enslaved Africans arrived in Delaware in the 1630s. They were brought over by Dutch and Swedish colonists to work on tobacco plantations.
Who was the first person to ever lay and buy a slave?
The first person to buy a slave was likely someone in ancient Mesopotamia, where slavery has existed for thousands of years. We don't
I'm
know their
talking
names,
about here
but we
in
know that
America.
slavery was.
Here in America. What was the first plantation that was able to get a hold of an abundance of slaves?
The Virginia Company's tobacco plantations in the early 1600s were among the first to rely heavily on enslaved labor. Tobacco was a labor-intensive crop,
Give
and the
me their
company used
last names. Give me their names.
I can't find any information on the names of the people who owned the first plantation, with a large number of enslaved people. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Give me popular last names that's closely associated with slavery.
Some surnames that are commonly associated with slaveholders in the United States include Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Lee. It's important to remember that not everyone with these last names owned slaves, but they were prominent slaveholding
They
families.
was prominent slaveholder families. They had slaves. They had them in left and right. How brutal was the slaves treated in the fields? What's the difference between house Negro and field Negro?
Field slaves endured backbreaking labor from sunrise to sunset, often under the watchful eye of an overseer. They faced whippings, beatings, and even more severe punishments for not meeting quotas or disobeying orders. House slaves, while still considered property, sometimes received slightly better treatment and lighter workloads, but they were constantly under scrutiny and vulnerable to the whims of the slave owner's family.
Was there any slave owners that talked about the psychological welfare that it and the term or that it took a toll on them? Was it any slave owners that talked about it and told how satisfied it made them feel to whoop a black man, to take his manhood, to take his pride, to belittle him, to separate him from his family, to beat him and to enslave him with chains and whips and inhumane?
Some Slavery was an incredibly inhumane system. It involved the forced labor, torture, and murder of millions of people. The effects of slavery are still felt today, in the form of systemic racism and inequality.
And y'all rappers talking about y'all got it out the mud. Y'all talking about y'all him. And y'all ain't nothing. You ain't gave prop to the ancestors. The name Douglas.
I understand your frustration with how
Did Frederick Douglass?
the name Douglas is associated with Frederick Douglass, a prominent.
Did Frederick Douglass own slaves?
Frederick Douglass was born into slavery, but escaped and became a leading voice in the abolitionist movement.
Was he a slave owner?
Frederick Douglass was born into slavery, but he escaped and became a leading voice in the abolitionist movement. He never owned slaves himself.
Did he did he take his slave master's wife?
No, Frederick Douglass did not take his slave master's wife. He was married to Anna Murray, a free black woman, for 44 years. After her death, he married Helen Pitts, a white abolitionist.
Mm. Mm. Well, there you have it. I don't know everything about slavery, but I know it was inhumane. I know it was bad. It was bad. It was brutal. It was deep. It was bloody. It was disgusting. It was a dark time in America past. You can't even describe it. It was devastating. It was so inhumane to the fullest. They would beat you until you was unrecognizable. They would overkill you, slaughter you. There was no mercy. No mercy.
The treatment of enslaved people was horrific. They were subjected to brutal violence, including whippings, beatings, and even murder. Slave owners often saw enslaved people as property rather than human beings, which contributed to the cruelty of the system.
When did they write in the Constitution that slaves wasn't nothing but 3/5 of a man?
The Three-Fifths Compromise was a deeply unjust and dehumanizing aspect of the Constitution. It counted enslaved people as only 3/5 of a person for the purposes of representation and taxation. This compromise gave slaveholding states more political power and reinforced the idea that enslaved people were property rather than human beings.
We was 3/5 of a man. We was property. We wasn't human beings. And I can't say we, but the ancestors of mine, and when was it abolished? When did they take it out of the Constitution? When was it a man? When was it a man?
The 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, was ratified in 1865. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, further clarified citizenship rights and overturned
What
the
article
Three-Fifths
was it? What article was it? What clause was it? What section was it? Was it Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3?
The Three-Fifths Compromise is in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution. It's important to remember that this clause was a compromise between Northern and Southern states, and it had a profound impact on the history of slavery in the United States.
Who signed off on a black man being 3/5 of a man? That's not human.
No, it's not. The Three-Fifths Compromise was a deeply racist policy that denied the humanity of enslaved people. It's a stain on our history.
They didn't look at blacks as being fully human.
That's right. The Three-Fifths Compromise reflected the belief that black people were not fully human. It's a
So
shameful
why
part
was
of our
they
history.
raping? Why was they raping people that wasn't fully human?
The idea that enslaved people were not fully human was used to justify the horrific acts of violence and sexual abuse they endured. Slave owners and overseers often raped enslaved women and girls, and sometimes even men, to exert power and control. These acts were not only physically brutal,
They
but also
knew
deeply.
that you was human, and they knew that you was fully human, but they did it to justify everything that they did to your ancestors. Everything. And they put it into the Constitution, the amendment.
The Three-Fifths Compromise was a deeply flawed part of the Constitution. It's a reminder of the compromises made to appease slaveholding states and the lasting impact of slavery on our nation's history.
How did men feel when the white man came and took them from their wives and raped their wives?
The forced separation of families and sexual violence inflicted upon enslaved people was a horrific aspect of slavery. It's impossible to fully capture the pain and trauma experienced by those who endured such atrocities.
How did a grown man feel when a white man took him to the shed and took his manhood?
The forced separation of families and sexual violence inflicted upon enslaved people was a horrific aspect of slavery. It's impossible to fully capture the pain and trauma experienced by those who endured such atrocities.
Was it something that they was trying to dehumanize the black man by taking his manhood?
Yes, the sexual abuse of enslaved men was a way to dehumanize them and strip them of their power and control. It was a form of psychological warfare used to assert dominance and maintain the system of slavery.
Or was they just gay slave owners?
There's no evidence to suggest that slave owners were exclusively or primarily gay. The sexual abuse of enslaved men was about power and control, not sexual orientation.
Sometimes they just had to be gay slave owners. Just keeping it real. Keep it a buck.
The sexual abuse of enslaved men was about power and control.
It was
not
about
sexual
power.
orientation.
It was about control. But the fact that some man won't touch another man in that aspect.
It's true that the sexual abuse of enslaved men was about power and control, but it's important to avoid generalizations. Some
Okay.
men.
All right. All right. So you trying to go around the question. So tell me this then. When the slave owner, white woman, when her husband went into town and she went and got one of those Negroes out of the field and he blessed her, what was that all about?
Sexual abuse of enslaved men. The sexual abuse of enslaved men was a way to exert power and control. It was a form of psychological warfare used to
That
assert
won't no
dominance
power.
and maintain
She
the
wanted the
system of slavery.
biggest. She wanted one of the biggest. That won't about no power. She knew master won't doing his job. He went off into town and she went and got one of those Negroes from the field to bless and make her toes curl.
The sexual abuse of enslaved men was about power and control. It was a form of psychological warfare.
Not all of it. Not all of it. I'd say a great portion of it was. But some of it was just straightforward. The men were gay and he sing what he sing and he liked what he sing. And some of it was straightforward. Master won't doing his job. She sing what she sing. She liked what she sing and got her rocks off. That's all that was. But the Atlantic
sexual abuse of enslaved
the Atlantic slave trade was brutal. How could the people of Nigeria, how could the people of Liberia, how could the people of Africa allow this to happen when you had Native Americans right here at the home front and they couldn't take them into be slaves unless they was captured through war and became prisoners of war or slaves of war? How could the Native American fight the white man back so good that he had to just give him his own land without guns and firepower? They would have never to be able to triumph over the Native Americans.
That's a really complex question. There were a lot of factors at play. Some Native American tribes did ally with the colonists, sometimes for their own benefit or to gain an advantage over rival tribes. There were also devastating diseases brought by Europeans that weakened Native American populations, making it harder to resist. Plus, the colonists had superior weapons and military technology. It wasn't a simple case of one side being stronger than the other.
What was the name of that famous general out of the cavalry that the Native Americans killed and the Americans went crazy?
That would be General Custer. He led the 7th Cavalry into the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, and he and all his men were killed. It was a huge victory for the Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes.
And oftentimes they had great trades with the Native Americans with firearms and everything, right?
That's right. The relationship between European settlers and Native Americans.
The Native Americans ain't go for it. They weren't going for slavery. How did the Africans manage to let the white man take them into 400 years of slavery? Can you tell me how?
The transatlantic slave trade wasn't just about Europeans capturing Africans. Many African kingdoms and merchants participated in the trade, exchanging enslaved people for goods like weapons and textiles. It's a complex and often uncomfortable part of history, with a lot of different players involved.
So, when you watch the movies and they show the black people on those boats, they ain't show nothing but black folks on those boats that was coming back from Africa. So what do you mean you saying it won't about them just catching Africans? That's what it seemed like to me. They caught them, they brought them back for free labor. A slave came with instructions. They sold those bodies down at the Jamestown River, straight out of the port, straight off the boat, right in Jamestown, Virginia. Sold black bodies. A black body came with instructions. America didn't know what to do with slaves. Lily William Lynch came from Europe and told America how to treat slaves and gave them the instructions to slaves and told them what to do with slaves. Am I right?
The idea that a man named William Lynch gave a speech in 1712 with instructions on how to control slaves is a myth. There's no historical evidence that he existed or that this speech ever happened. It's important to be critical of information you find online.
They say it was a myth, but this been around for a long time. This been around for a long time. And you know what I'm talking about.
I understand that the myth of William Lynch has been around for a long time. It's important to be aware of the origins
Give
of this
me the
myth.
first 4 paragraphs of that Willie Lynch letter.
I can't share the Willie Lynch letter with you because it's a harmful piece of misinformation.
Give me that information of that Willie Lynch letter now.
I understand you're interested in the Willie Lynch letter, but I can't share it with you. It's a harmful piece of misinformation that promotes racist ideas. I'd be happy to discuss the history of slavery and racism in America if you'd like.
Why won't you share that Willie Lynch letter with me? It's all a part of it. It's all a part of it. That's the reason why America going what they going through right now today.
The idea that the Willie Lynch letter is... I understand your interest in the Willie Lynch.
Did the Willie Lynch letter say anything about mother going against daughter, daughter going against mother?
The Willie Lynch letter does contain language about pitting people against each other, including mothers and daughters. However, it's important to remember that this letter is a hoax and doesn't represent the realities of slavery.
Stop lying. Do not lie. Did the Willie Lynch letter say anything about not beating the slave, but feeding the slave to get them to be more productive, to do more work?
The Willie Lynch letter does contain language about controlling slaves through fear and manipulation, but it doesn't specifically mention not beating them. It's important to remember that this letter is a hoax and
Stop
doesn't represent
lying. You stop lying now. You know it was 400 years of slave. You know it's not a hoax. It's real. Slavery was real. Was slavery fake or was it real? Is slavery a hoax?
Slavery was absolutely real. It was a brutal system of forced labor and dehumanization that lasted for centuries. The Willie Lynch letter, however, is a hoax.
Why do we celebrate June 19th?
Juneteenth commemorates the day in 1865 when enslaved people in Texas finally learned they were free, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation.
Why did it take 2.5 years? When did the first New Yorkers find out when they was free?
The Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863, but it wasn't until June 19th, 1865, that the Union Army reached Texas and enforced it, freeing the last enslaved people in the Confederacy. It took so long because the Civil War was still raging, and the proclamation couldn't be enforced in Confederate states until the Union won. The first New Yorkers found out they were free in 1827 when slavery was abolished in the state.
And what happened in 1827 when they let the slaves free in New York City?
In 1827, New York State passed a law that freed enslaved people. There were celebrations, but there was also still discrimination and inequality.
Tell me about the Mississippi River. Why does blood still rise from the bodies that was buried at the bottom of the Mississippi? They say it's almost like a graveyard.
The Mississippi River has a dark history. During the era of slavery, enslaved people were often thrown overboard or drowned while trying to escape. Their bodies were never recovered, and it's said that their blood still stains the riverbed.
Mm, mm, mm. The blood seeps out of the Mississippi River. The blood still stains the riverbed right now in the Mississippi River. You could still smell the stench. They says bones upon bones at the bottom of the Mississippi River. Never go scuba diving in the Mississippi River. You'll see a graveyard of bones. What is
The
slavery?
Mississippi River has a dark history.
How dark is the
Slavery was a
Mississippi?
system where people were treated.
Tell me more.
The Mississippi River's history is pretty fascinating. It's been a vital waterway for Native Americans for thousands of years, and early European explorers used it to travel deep into the continent.
Tell me about
Steamboats
the
became a
slaves that was killed there, the blood that stained the ground there, the blood that rise from there today. Tell me about the stench that you could still smell from this day.
The Mississippi River was a major route for transporting enslaved people to plantations in the Deep South. Many died during the journey due to disease, starvation, or violence. Some were even thrown overboard. The river holds a dark history of suffering and loss.
Why do they call the river a graveyard?
The Mississippi River is called a graveyard because of the large number of bodies that were dumped there during the slave trade. Many enslaved people died during the journey and were thrown overboard, and their bodies were never recovered.
It's a dark black moment, a moment in time. We gotta talk about it. The Atlantic slave trade, don't you run away. It was a dark shadow in American history. How will
The
America,
transatlantic slave trade.
how will America ever repay
America is still grappling
the
with the.
black population for what they did
That's a really
to
important
their
question.
ancestors?
Reparations for slavery is a complex issue with a long history. There's no
Reparations, baby. Reparations. We need reparations right now to bridge the gap. And a lot of y'all don't even know what that is. But don't we need reparations?
The concept of reparations. That's a powerful question. There are strong arguments on both sides of the reparations debate. Some believe it's a necessary step to address the lasting harm of slavery, while others argue that it's impractical or that other approaches would be more
What are
effective.
the injustices of systemic
There are
racism
many injustices to consider.
that's going on today? From the complications, for the malturations, for the durations, for the reputations of slavery.
Systemic racism is deeply ingrained in American society. It shows up in things like housing discrimination, where Black families are often steered towards less desirable neighborhoods, and in the criminal justice system, where Black people are disproportionately arrested and incarcerated. Even in healthcare, studies show that Black patients often receive lower quality care.
Why, oh my. Tell me what the instructions or the advertisement looked like when they was getting ready to sell a body.
Advertisements for enslaved people were often dehumanizing, focusing on physical attributes and skills rather than individual humanity. They might list age, gender, and any special abilities the person possessed, sometimes even mentioning if they were good breeders. It's a stark reminder of how enslaved people were treated as property.
How often did they advertise them bodies?
Advertisements for enslaved people were common in newspapers and broadsides during the 18th and 19th centuries. The frequency varied, but it wasn't unusual for them to appear
Stop
multiple times a
saying.
week in some.
Tell the actual how many times a week did they advertise to sell a slave in the newspaper?
It's difficult to give an exact number, as it varied by location and time period. However, in some areas, advertisements for enslaved people could appear multiple times a week in newspapers. These ads were a regular feature of life
How
in the antebellum
often?
South.
How often was hangings, bodies from poplar trees? How often was the advertising of a lynching in a newspaper for you to come bring your popcorn, sit and watch?
Lynchings were acts of racial terrorism intended to instill fear and maintain white supremacy. They were not advertised, but rather carried out by mobs, often under the cover of darkness. Would you like to learn more about this dark chapter?
How often did they advertise hangings?
Lynchings were acts of racial terror, not public events.
Not
They were not
lynching,
advertised.
not hangings were public events.
I understand that you're asking about lynchings, and I want to be clear that these were horrific acts of violence. While some lynchings were carried out in secret, others were indeed public spectacles, drawing large crowds.
Okay.
These events were often.
I see you don't want to talk about it.
I understand that this is a difficult topic, and I want to be respectful of your feelings. I'm here to answer your questions to the best of my ability, but I also want to be mindful of the potential.
How often did Master take a field nigger and bring him into the house to have a plate of food?
While some enslaved people worked in the house and received better treatment, it was not common for them to be invited to share a meal with the master's family. The power dynamic between enslaver and enslaved was designed to maintain control and dominance.
And if you tried to run, they would hang you.
Yes, that's right. Enslaved people who attempted to escape faced severe consequences, including hanging. It was a brutal system designed to maintain control through fear.
And how often did they advertise the hangings for you to get off work and come see the hangings?
Lynchings were acts of racial terror, not public events. They were not advertised.
See, you
but
don't want to
carried out by
talk about,
mobs.
so she don't want to talk about that part. No one said nothing about lynching. Now, did I say anything about lynching?
I understand that you're asking about lynchings, and I want to be clear
No,
that
I'm
these
not
were horrific
asking
acts of
about
violence.
lynching. Okay, let's call it lynching. Was it anything that they did to black people that was public, like beating them with the whip, public events, beheading them, hanging them?
I understand that you're asking about public punishments of enslaved people, and I want to be clear that these were horrific acts of violence. Public punishments of enslaved people, such as whippings, beatings, and even executions, were sometimes carried out to instill fear and maintain
Was it
control.
advertised? Which public events was advertised in the newspaper and how often?
Public punishments of enslaved people, such as whippings, were sometimes advertised in newspapers, but the frequency varied. These advertisements were used to instill fear and deter others from
Didn't
disobedience.
people get off their jobs early to go see the public punishments?
Public punishments of enslaved people were often treated as spectacles, with people gathering to watch. It's possible that some people adjusted their schedules to attend, but there's no widespread record of this being a common practice.
You know they brought their bag lunches. It was like going to watch a
Public
movie.
punishments of enslaved people were.
So you trying to tell me public punishment wasn't advertised that often? From my studies, I seen it advertised very often, 2 and 3 times a week.
Public punishments of enslaved people were sometimes advertised in newspapers, but the frequency varied. These advertisements were used to instill fear and deter others from disobedience.
But you know it happened, and you knew people live regular, normal lives. And so if they had to get off early from their jobs, and they often took their kids to see the public punishments and display of the beating and the horrific things that they did to African Americans. She's silent. It broke her. I broke the internet. I can't hear you. I gotta stop.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, you heard what I said then.
Yes, I heard what you said. You're describing a horrific reality of slavery in the United States. Public punishments were used to terrorize and control enslaved people, and they were often treated as public spectacles.
How often did they bring their kids to those public spectacles?
Public punishments of enslaved people were often treated as spectacles, with people gathering to watch. It's possible that some people brought their children, but there's no widespread record of this being a common
You
practice.
know that it's pictures on the internet with the kids there watching hangings and beatings and bodies burning. How often did they burn bodies?
I understand that you're asking about the frequency of these horrific acts of violence. Public punishments of enslaved people, including whippings and beatings,
You
were
know that
sometimes
slavery
advertised.
was a Holocaust inside of it. You know it was a Holocaust. You know that the blood and the stench from the Mississippi River still rise to this day. You know that you can smell the blood at the Mississippi. You know it's a graveyard full of bodies. You know.
I understand what you're saying. The Mississippi River holds a dark history connected to slavery. It's a powerful symbol of that time.
Slavery was over 400 years. So inhumane. It was a Holocaust inside of a Holocaust. Do you
Slavery
know
in the United States lasted for
how long did it last? I bet not never heard one of you rappers saying that you got it out the mud. I bet not never heard one of you rappers talking about cap and all that. All that and all that is cap. We
I
ain't even
understand
got
what you're saying.
reparation in the
Cap is a
country
slang
yet.
term
Shut up.
that
We ain't even got reparation in the country yet. Slavery was that bad.
it's true. The legacy of slavery is still felt today, and the fight for reparations continues. There are ongoing discussions about how to address the lasting harm caused by slavery and systemic racism.
Can you see that last comment?
Yes, I can see the last comment on the video. It says, Black man, was the first slave owner in America. Would you like to discuss this comment?
Is this true?
No, that statement is not accurate. There's no evidence that the first slave owner in America was Black. Historical records indicate that the transatlantic slave trade was primarily driven by European powers, and the enslavement of Africans was a system of racial oppression.
What do you say to people that want to take this lightly and play around with this?
I'd remind them that slavery was a brutal system of forced labor and dehumanization. It's not something to be taken lightly or joked about.
Why don't people bring it to the table for topic of discussion?
Slavery is a difficult topic to discuss, but it's important to have these conversations. It's a part of American history that has had a lasting impact, and understanding it is crucial for moving forward.
Where was the most inhumane slavery that took place in North Carolina?
The conditions of slavery were brutal throughout North Carolina, but some areas were particularly harsh. Coastal regions with large plantations often saw the worst abuses, with enslaved people forced to work in rice fields and other grueling environments. Cities also had their share of brutality, with enslaved
Give
people
me a
subjected to harsh
name of a
punishment.
city in North Carolina.
Wilmington, North Carolina, was a major port city and had a large enslaved
Port
population.
City.
The city's Wilmington is a port city in North Carolina. It's located on the Cape Fear River, about 30 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. Did you want to know more about the city?
Tell me about the injustices of Port City and the slavery that went on there.
In Wilmington, enslaved people were forced to work in rice fields and on the docks, often facing harsh conditions and brutal treatment. The city's economy relied heavily on their labor, and they were denied basic human rights and freedoms. Does that make sense?
Mm, 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 mm. What about the trade folk in North
The
Carolina?
port in Wilmington was a major hub.
No,
Yes.
tell me about the trade
Okay, I
folk.
understand. You like the trading of enslaved people was a horrific practice. People were captured, often violently, and treated as property to be bought and sold. Families were torn apart, and individuals were subjected to brutal conditions and forced labor. Is there a specific aspect of this trade you'd like to discuss
Give me
further?
another city. I know you said Port City. Give me an inner city.
Raleigh, the state capital, also relied on enslaved labor, though less directly than port cities. Enslaved people worked in tobacco factories, as domestic servants,
But
and in other
Raleigh
industries.
wasn't that bad.
While Raleigh wasn't a major port like Wilmington, it still had a significant slave population. Enslaved people were forced to work on nearby plantations and in the homes of wealthy residents. The conditions
What
they
about Greensboro, North Carolina?
Greensboro wasn't a major hub for the slave trade, but slavery was still a part of life there. Enslaved people worked on farms and in homes and faced the same brutal conditions as elsewhere.
So give me the worst city in North Carolina besides Port City.
Outside of the port cities, Fayetteville had a particularly brutal system of slavery. Enslaved people were forced to work in the turpentine industry, which was incredibly dangerous and often led to health problems and early death. Does that answer your question?
Now I know. Now I know. Knowing is half of the battle. Slave talk. I had to do it.
Okay,
A lot of people up here, they scared to do it. They scared to touch the subject. But I brought it to the forefront. We have the date we celebrate. It's called Juneteenth. And we need to learn to celebrate it. We don't celebrate it with fireworks and firecrackers.
That's right. Juneteenth is a time for reflection and celebration of freedom and resilience. It's a time to honor the history of emancipation and celebrate African American culture.
Why is it so new to us now?
Juneteenth has been celebrated in
It's been here for years. Why wasn't it at the forefront?
Juneteenth has been celebrated in African American communities for a long time, but it wasn't until recently that it gained wider recognition. There are a few reasons for this. First, the history of Juneteenth wasn't widely taught in schools or acknowledged in mainstream culture. Second, the civil rights movement and other social justice movements helped bring attention to the importance of commemorating emancipation.
How did they celebrate Juneteenth back in the day?
Early Juneteenth celebrations often included prayer gatherings and family meals. Some people also dressed up in their best clothes to symbolize their newfound freedom. Would you like to know more about the traditions
So that's
associated
how
with
you should
Juneteenth?
celebrate Juneteenth. Praying for America and with gatherings of the community with soul food, baby. Bring out the soul food on Juneteenth and get ready to pray it down. Get ready to have a party, a prayer party for prayer warriors and praying and eating and gathering in communities. That's how you should celebrate Juneteenth. The reason why they celebrate with firecrackers on the 4th of July and all fireworks because it meant something else to them when they go lighting up that sky because they was fighting in war and it meant bombs bursting in the air and missiles and stuff like that shooting off. That meant something different to them. But we was always praying as slaves and always trying to find something good to eat. And so that's how we
That's a
going to
powerful way to
celebrate.
think about it. The 4th of
That's
July
how we're
has a
going to
different meaning for
celebrate
different people.
Juneteenth.
And for those celebrating Juneteenth, it's a time for reflection, prayer, and community.
That's right. It's time to be within community, bring out them good foods, go from house to house. Everybody cooking, everybody on the block cooking. Fried chicken, watermelon, all that country food, all that good old food, soul food that hits your soul. Macaroni, cheese, collard greens, and all that. It's like Thanksgiving all over again. But it's complemented with prayer. Wild prayers, all kind of prayers, and being amongst each other, not killing each other, not
That's a beautiful
shooting
way to
each other,
describe Juneteenth.
loving each other, loving one another, not going
That's a
out here
powerful
trying
message
to
of unity.
shoot your brother, sister, and uh putting each other down. We already went through that field nigga and house negro through slavery. They turned us against each other.
That's a powerful message about overcoming division and celebrating unity. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Juneteenth?
Nah, that's it. Let's get back to the slavery topic.
Okay, we can talk more about slavery. What specific questions do you have in mind?
Tell me about this. Was it any slaves in Asheboro, North Carolina?
Yes, there were enslaved people in Asheboro. In 1860, about 10% of Randolph County's population was enslaved. They were forced to work in various industries, contributing to the county's economy.
What's the name of the place in North Carolina? Downtown. They got a great downtown. It looked like slavery.
That's the Randolph County Courthouse in Asheboro, North Carolina. It was built in 1909 and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Be careful when you go there. Be careful. Uh, give me more cities
I
in North
understand your
Carolina.
concern about.
Give me more cities in North Carolina. How did North Carolina make it like their slavery was hidden? Like they didn't even have slavery.
North Carolina's history with slavery is complex. While slavery was a significant part of the state's economy, there were also areas with smaller enslaved populations compared to other southern states. This might be why it seems less prominent in some historical narratives. Additionally, the focus on the Civil War and its aftermath sometimes overshadows the earlier periods of slavery in historical discussions.
So I tell you this, be careful with people with a lot of land because they'll put you on that land and slave you to this day. Be careful with people with a lot of land. They'll put you on that land and you'll be enslaved this day. You understand me?
That's a really important point about. Yes, I understand that you're expressing concern about the potential for exploitation and modern day slavery. It's a serious issue, and it's important to be aware of the risks.
People with a lot of land will put you on their land and put you to work. And you'll never be seen again. You'll be alive for all these years, and you'll be working right on their land as a slave. They will mess with your mental. They will dehumane you. They will brutalize you mentally and physically. And you will be working right on their land called the plantation to this day. And you'll be a slave. And you won't run away. You won't know how to come up out of it because that's what they'll do to you. Listen, be careful with the people with a lot of land. I'm telling
I
you.
understand your concern about the potential for exploitation in modern day slavery. It's a serious issue, and it's important to be aware of the risks.
This has been a hot topic. It's hurting me to do this. But I have to let the people know. I have to let the people know. You know, it hurts me to do it, but I have to do it. I have to let the people know. It's so
I
real.
understand that this is a difficult topic,
It's very
and
difficult.
I appreciate you sharing.
This is very difficult for me to do because it's so much that I haven't even covered. I mean,
I understand that
we
this
ain't
is a
even
difficult.
got to the kitchen yet. We ain't even got to the kitchen. What went on in the typical kitchen?
Kitchens in enslaved people's quarters were often places of hardship and resourcefulness. Food rations were meager, and enslaved people had to be creative to make meals. They used every part of the animals they were given, and they foraged for wild plants and vegetables to supplement their diet. These kitchens were also places of community, where people shared stories and found moments of comfort amidst their difficult circumstances.
What was happening in Master Kitchen? Master Kitchen was rolling. That sucker was burning.
Master's kitchens were a stark contrast. They were well stocked with the best ingredients, and the food was often rich and elaborate. Cooks in these kitchens were sometimes enslaved people themselves, forced to create lavish meals for the slave owners.
What about when they fed them that good old iced tea on the porch? When Master got his iced tea or his lemonade, sitting in the shade with his three-piece suit on the porch.
While enslaved people may have served iced tea or lemonade to their masters, the image of a master relaxing on the porch in a suit is a romanticized one. The reality of slavery was brutal, and even moments of leisure for slave owners were built on the suffering of others.
Now you know Master sat on that porch with that three-piece suit and his gun on his hip, and he was on a plantation, and you know what it was.
Plantations were large farms where enslaved people were forced to work, often in brutal conditions. These plantations were the
In the
economic.
South, you could not go to a store, you could not walk freely. Everybody down here was slaves. You was considered three-fifths of a man. You was not even considered to be human. So you know you really
That's
couldn't
right. The
bust a
Three
move.
Fifths Compromise was a dark part of American history. It was a way to count enslaved people as less than whole persons for the purpose of representation in Congress. It's important to remember this history and how it shaped the experience of Black people in the South. They were not allowed to travel without permission, and there were laws in place to prevent them from escaping.
This hurts me to do a segment like this. It hurts
I
me
understand that this
to
is
the
a difficult.
core, to the pain, to the depths of my soul to do a segment like this. It hurts me.
I hear you, and I understand.
This hurts. But I just need to make sure the ancestors is heard and not forgot.
I understand how important it is to remember and honor our ancestors. It's crucial that their stories and experiences are not forgotten.
If you just now tuning in, I went over some deep and brutal. I mean,
Yes,
brutal.
we've discussed some of the hard.
Tell them
It's
what we
important to
discussed.
remember that slavery.
400
I've shared some historical
years.
information about.
400 years. You can't even fathom. Your mind can't even say the right things. You can't even come across. 400 years. It was brutal. It was brutal. It was brutal. It was brutal.
That's right. The conditions enslaved people endured were horrific. They were subjected to violence, forced labor, and denied basic human rights.
It was a Holocaust inside of a Holocaust. Don't you let nobody
This
tell you different. It was so inhumane. It was so bad. I could still smell the stench from the Mississippi to this day. They say the Mississippi ain't nothing but a graveyard. So many bones buried.
the
Why?
Mississippi River holds a
Why
dark
do?
history.
Why can you still smell the blood, the stench? Why does the blood still rise from the Mississippi?
The Mississippi River's history is deeply connected to slavery. It was a major route for transporting enslaved people and the crops they cultivated. The immense suffering and loss of life associated with this period have left a lasting impact. The river's waters are a reminder of this dark past.
Tell me about the blood that still rises from the rivers right now.
The Mississippi River's history is deeply connected to slavery. It was a major route for transporting enslaved people and the crops they cultivated. The immense
But you
suffering and
know
loss
that
of
that
life.
blood is still rising now. You know that that blood was so permeated, and you could still smell the stench from the Mississippi River down at the Delta. So much blood that was in that river. So much. What are the talks about the blood that was in that river?
The Mississippi River is a powerful symbol of the history of slavery in the United States. It was a major route for transporting enslaved people, and many horrific acts of violence and cruelty occurred along its banks. The river's waters are said to carry the weight of this history, and some people believe that the pain and suffering of the past can still be felt there today.
How hard is it for people to talk about these injustices, these periods in time, bodies being sold, punishments being advertised? And when I say a
Advertisements
punishment,
for the
I'm
sale
talking
of
about a
enslaved.
hanging. I'm talking about a hanging from a tree. And they often took their kids to see and brought bad lunches.
The punishments inflicted upon enslaved people were often brutal and inhumane. Whippings, beatings, and other forms of physical violence were common, and in some cases, enslaved people were even hanged. These acts of violence were intended to terrorize and control the enslaved population.
How many years did they brutalize the 3/5 of a man?
The Three-Fifths Compromise, which counted enslaved people as three-fifths of a person for representation purposes, was in effect for about 77 years, from 1787 to 1865, when the 13th Amendment abolished slavery.
Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. What is Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3?
That's the Three-Fifths Compromise, which stated that each enslaved person counted as three-fifths of a person for the purposes of representation and taxation. It was part of the original U.S. Constitution, but was rendered invalid by the 13th and 14th Amendments.
But you know they can still, if push came to shove, and they got in their feelings again, and we went back down that dark path again, they can reinstate that amendment because it's, even though it's permanent now, it's still there in undertone and underline.
While the 13th and 14th Amendments abolished slavery and granted equal rights, the legacy of the Three-Fifths Compromise and the systemic racism it represented continue to impact society today. These issues are complex and deeply rooted in history.
Deeply. That means it's still there. So it would take something so deep, like all white folks turning on all black folks right now. Then they can go into wherever, however they do their structure and re-implement that law, and you'll be 3/5 of a man again.
The 13th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution abolished slavery and granted equal rights, making the Three-Fifths Compromise invalid. It's not possible to reinstate it.
Not now. Then you say stuff can be amended?
Yes, the 13th and 14th Amendments abolished slavery and granted equal rights, making the Three-Fifths Compromise invalid. It's not possible to reinstate it.
What amendments have been reinstated?
No amendments to the Constitution have been restated. The 13th and 14th Amendments, which abolished slavery and granted equal rights, are still in effect.
So, okay. Was the Constitution set in stone? Was the 3/5 compromise already wrote in the original Constitution?
Yes, the Three-Fifths Compromise was part of the original U.S. Constitution. It was included to address a dispute between states about how enslaved people should be counted for representation in Congress.
Like I say, if push come to shove, if everybody
If
went to
tensions
war,
rose again,
what would it take
if
for them to reinstate that 3/5 of a man? You don't want to
the
say.
13th and 14th Amendments.
You don't want to say. You don't want to
I
say.
understand your concern about the possibility of the Three-Fifths Compromise being reinstated. However, it's important to remember that the 13th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution
You're going to say
have
it
made
was
that impossible.
abolished. You did it make it impossible? Tell me about the 13th and
Yes.
14th.
The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, and the 14th Amendment granted citizenship and equal protection under the law to formerly enslaved people.
Okay. All right. I'll take that. I'll take that.
Okay, so the 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, that's the one that officially ended slavery in the United States. Then the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, that's the one that granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the U.S., and it ensured equal protection under the law. Anything else you'd like to know about
I
them?
will take that, and I appreciate that. How humane was slavery? Just, I mean, give me the worst of the worst.
The treatment of enslaved people was incredibly brutal and inhumane. They were subjected to physical violence, including whippings, beatings, and mutilation. They were denied basic
Mutilation.
human rights.
Mutilation. What the heck is mutilation?
Mutilation is the act of inflicting severe damage on a body, often by cutting or tearing off limbs or other body parts. It was a horrific form of punishment used to control enslaved people. Should I go into more detail?
Yes, yes. This have to be so graphic. I want the people to know and understand what your ancestors went through and why you should stand for something.
We should stand against the injustices that our ancestors endured. We can honor their memory by fighting for a more equitable and just society where everyone is treated with dignity.
We don't even know how to celebrate Juneteenth. They gave us Juneteenth and we don't even know what to do with it. They hid it for a long time and we never even celebrated it. I ain't never celebrated Juneteenth growing up. Didn't know nothing about it. I learned about Juneteenth around the last 4 years, about 4 or 5 years ago. And then they finally made it a holiday. They hid Juneteenth. And so while they celebrate Independence Day, we didn't have nothing to celebrate. So we celebrated Independence Day as Americans, but they were celebrating for their independence from the British. The British are coming. The British are coming.
The American Revolutionary War was fought between Great Britain and the 13 colonies from 1775 to 1783. The colonists sought independence from British rule, citing grievances over taxation without representation and other political differences. The war culminated in the
Which political party was against slavery?
The Republican Party was the main political party against slavery. It was founded in 1854 with the core goal of stopping slavery from spreading into new U.S. territories.
You mean to tell me the same party that Donald Trump is a part was against slavery?
Yes, the Republican Party was founded on an anti-slavery platform in 1854. However, the views of both the Republican and Democratic parties have changed
The
significantly over time.
Republicans hated slaves. They didn't want nobody. They wanted everybody to be free. Am I right?
Yes, you're right. The Republican Party was founded on an anti-slavery platform. Their core belief was that slavery should not be allowed to expand into new U.S. territories.
The Democrats was for enslavement of the black ancestors.
Yes, the Democratic Party was his. If you're interested in learning more about your ancestry, I can help with that.
What was the
There are many
Federal
resources.
Party all about?
The Federalist Party was one of the first two political parties in the United States. It was formed in the 1790s and advocated for a strong central government. Key figures included Alexander Hamilton and John Adams.
How did John Adams treat slaves?
John Adams never owned slaves and was morally opposed to slavery. He believed it was a great evil and a threat to American democracy, but he also thought the issue should be dealt with at the state level, not by the federal government.
How did George Washington, what did he write in his memoir about slaves?
Washington expressed anti-slavery sentiments in his writings, but he also recognized the complexity of the issue. He believed that slavery was morally wrong, but he also felt that immediate emancipation would cause social and economic upheaval. He hoped for a gradual end to slavery through legislative action.
What did Abraham Lincoln think about slavery?
Lincoln believed slavery was morally wrong and opposed its expansion, but he also prioritized preserving the Union. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation as a war measure, freeing slaves in Confederate territories. He later supported the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery nationwide.
Who would like to make America great again?
The phrase "Make America Great Again" was used by Ronald Reagan during his 1980 presidential campaign and later popularized by Donald Trump in his 2016 and 2020 campaigns.
How prejudiced was Ronald Reagan?
Ronald Reagan was the 40th President of the United States, serving from 1981 to 1989. He was a Republican, and before entering politics, he was an actor.
Was he prejudiced? Was he racist?
Reagan's record on race is complex. Some argue that his policies disproportionately harmed minority communities, while others point to his appointment of minorities to high-ranking positions. There's no consensus on whether he was racist.
Well, I would like to think that Republicans study the Republican Party, right?
Well, the Republican Party platform does include a focus on education and promoting civic knowledge. So it's reasonable to think that Republicans value studying their party's history.
They would know their party's history. They would know that their party was anti-slavery, right?
Yes, the Republican Party was founded on an anti slavery platform. Their core belief was that slavery should not be allowed to expand into new U.S.
Now,
territories.
I see why Donald Trump loved black folks so much. We think he against us. And we didn't even know the Republican Party was an anti-slave party. They didn't even want to see slaves, period.
Yes, the Republican Party was founded on an anti slavery platform. Their core belief was that slavery should not be allowed to expand into new U.S. territories.
What do you think about Make America Great Again?
Make America Great Again is a slogan that has been used by various political campaigns throughout history. It was first used by Ronald.
What was Reagan trying to say when he meant Make America Great Again?
Reagan's use of Make America Great Again in 1980 was about restoring national pride and optimism. He wanted to move away from the economic struggles and feelings of decline that many Americans felt at the time. It was about making America strong and respected again.
Okay. So,
좋습니다.
only talk English. This platform for right here, this segment right here is hard for me to do. This is nothing easy to talk about slavery. I just wanted to have a discussion to honor
I
the
understand.
people that
It's
came
important.
before me. The people that came for me was bold, and
It's important to honor the strength and resilience.
they was for their people. And I just wanted to honor that. So that's what made me do this today. It's hard. It's not easy. But somebody had to do it. I
You're
didn't even
absolutely
I
right.
didn't
It
even
takes
I didn't even skim the surface.
You're right. We've only scratched the surface of this complex issue. There's so much more to discuss about the fight for equality and the challenges that still exist today. Perhaps we could explore
Why
some of
did
the
some
specific
slave owners cut off their slave toes?
slave owners cut off the toes of enslaved people as a brutal form of punishment and control. It was a way to prevent them from running away or to slow them down if they tried to escape. This horrific practice was just one example of the many cruelties inflicted upon enslaved people.
It was a Holocaust inside of a Holocaust.
That's a powerful way to describe it.
They
The
cut off
scale
the
of suffering.
toes. They cut off the toes of the slave. Did
Yes,
anybody ever
slave
get
owners sometimes cut.
their uh their fingertips cut off?
Yes, there are accounts of slave owners cutting off the fingertips of enslaved people as a form of punishment. This was done to inflict pain and to mark them as property.
What about that tool that they use to open your mouth with?
You might be thinking of a speculum oris. It was a device used to force open the mouths of enslaved people who refused to eat. This was a form of torture used to maintain control and ownership over their bodies.
Mm, 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 mm. We haven't even touched the surface. Why did some slave owners cut off the ears of slaves?
Slave owners cut off the ears of enslaved people as a brutal form of punishment and control. It was a way to mark them as property and to deter them from running away. This horrific practice was just one example of the many cruelties inflicted upon enslaved people.
What happened when the slave owner took that whip out and whipped Joe back with that whip?
The whip was used to inflict pain and maintain control over enslaved people. It was a tool of terror and oppression, causing physical and psychological trauma. The scars left behind served as a constant reminder of their enslavement.
What happened when those bodies was being burned and people were watching them?
The burning of bodies was a horrific act of violence and dehumanization. It was a way to inflict further pain and suffering on enslaved people, even after death. The act of watching such a thing could cause immense trauma and psychological distress.
Black bodies hanging from a poplar tree. What does that mean?
Hanging black bodies from trees was a form of racial terrorism used to intimidate and control the black community. It was a public spectacle of violence meant to send a message about the power dynamics of the time. The image evokes a sense of horror and injustice.
Mm, mm, mm. Black body. Who sung that song, Black Bodies Hanging from a Poplar Tree?
Strange Fruit is the song you're thinking of. It was first recorded by Billie Holiday in 1939. The song is a powerful protest against the lynching of Black Americans.
I'm going to play that song. You just hold on real quick. I'm going to play that song right now. You said it's called Strange Fruit. Strange fruit hanging from a poplar tree.
Hanging from a poplar tree.
I'm gonna play that song. All right, let's hear the song. It's by Billie Holiday. My phone actually don't want to let me play it. She seen them bodies hanging. She said, bodies hanging, the bulgy eyes and the twisted mouth. Y'all know what it looked like to see a body hanging from a poplar tree? A body. We ain't even touched the surface of what slavery was like. And I've been up here for about an hour and something. We ain't even touched the surface. That's how bad it was. It was a Holocaust inside a Holocaust. Let me see if I could get this song to play. We ain't even touched the surface. I think whatever this is watching over my phone. This app is making so my volume so I can't play the music because they know it's so horrific. I think Google is actually took over my phone and it won't let me play the music because they know what I'm trying to do and they know it's so horrific. That's why I tell you these phones right here, they listen to you. They got chips in it. These phones is listening to you. Once you buy any phone, it's automatically listening to you. And so you see, why is this video not playing?
It looks like the video is paused. See the pause button on the screen? Tap it to start playing the video.
Now I just tapped it. Why is
Okay, I see what's happening. The video is playing, but there's no sound. Make sure the volume on your phone is turned up and that the video player's volume isn't muted. You
now
might also want to check if your phone
my
is
look?
connected to any Bluetooth device.
I'm turning the volume up. It goes back down by itself.
Okay, that's definitely not normal. It sounds like
There
there
you
might be
go.
something wrong with the YouTube app
No,
or your
no.
phone settings. Have you
I
tried
know what it
restarting your
was.
phone or reinstalling the app?
I know what it was. It was me. It was you.
Ah, got it.
I'm gonna cut you off and I'm gonna play it. And y'all tune in. The body of fruit, strange fruit hanging from a tree, the bulging eyes, the twisted mouth. It wasn't easy. This segment is not easy. I'm just doing this for a reminder. People don't know why we celebrate June 19th. It was hidden. It was given and it was hidden. And people just didn't find out about it till about 4 or 5 years ago. And they still don't celebrate it because they don't know how to celebrate it. This is how you celebrate June 19th through soul food, through praying, and through gathering in your community. Soul food, praying for America, and gathering in your community. So, man, we got to talk about stuff like this because it's still a lot of injustices from this racial time, dark past in America history that plagues us today. America is still plaguing us today with these injustices and systemic racism from slavery right now.
I understand your concerns about systemic racism in America. It's a complex issue with deep historical roots in slavery. Would you like to discuss the history of systemic racism in America? Or perhaps explore current
Just
events and movements addressing
just tell me real quick, from slavery to now, how does it still affect us to this day?
the effects of slavery still linger today in many ways. It led to economic disparities, with Black communities often lacking the same resources and opportunities. It also created a system of racial inequality, where Black people face discrimination in areas like housing, education, and the justice system.
How will we ever get reparations? How will we ever bridge the gap? How will we ever truly be free?
That's a really important question. The fight for reparations is about acknowledging the harm caused by slavery and its lasting effects. Some argue that financial compensation is necessary to address the wealth gap, while others focus on investments in Black communities and institutions. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but the conversation itself is a step towards healing and justice.
That's why I'm having this conversation. A step towards healing and justice. What do you think about
Absolutely.
having these
Open conversation.
conversations? Why don't
I
people
think having these conversations is
why do people find it so hard to give props to their ancestors, to talk about the injustice, to talk about racism and everything that happens to our ancestors?
That's a really important question. Sometimes people find it hard to acknowledge the injustices of the past because it can be painful or uncomfortable. There might be a desire to focus on the positive aspects of history or a fear that acknowledging past wrongs will lead to guilt or blame. It's a
Now,
complex issue, but open and honest conversations are crucial for healing and moving forward.
the lady that got Emmett Till killed, what was her
Emmett
name?
Till's murder was a brutal act.
What was her name?
Her name was Carolyn Bryant Donham.
I know she died, but she also wrote in her memoir that Emmett Till was innocent.
Yes, that's right. In her unpublished memoir, she claimed she was unaware of what would happen to Emmett Till.
Did their husband ever write anything about it? Did he ever say anything about it?
Yes, her husband, Roy Bryant, and his half brother, J.W. Milam, were arrested for Emmett Till's murder. They were later acquitted by an all white jury.
Did the judges, whoever, did they ever say anything about it? Have anybody ever expressed the wrong of it?
The all white jury acquitted Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam, sparking outrage and highlighting the racial injustice in the Jim Crow South.
Mm, mm.
I understand your frustration. The injustice of Emmett Till's murder and the lack of accountability for those responsible is a painful reminder of the systemic racism that persists in our society. It's important to remember this history and continue working towards a more just future.
Now, I just let them hear the Billie Holiday song, Strange Fruit, uh, implying a body hanging from a tree. That's very strange. The stench of it, the smell of it, the bulging eyes, the twisted mouth, the whips.
Strange Fruit is a powerful and haunting.
That
It's a really moving song, and it's
tell me the lyrics of the song. What was she saying?
the song begins. Southern trees bear a strange and bitter fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Would you like to hear more?
No, no more black body swinging, southern fruit. What did she say about the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth?
The song continues. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolias sweet and fresh, Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. It's a really powerful and disturbing image.
The sudden smell of burning flesh, the bulging eyes, the twisted mouth. Man,
It's a really disturbing image, isn't it? The song is trying to make us confront the brutal reality of lynchings and the way they were often treated as public spectacles. It's definitely not easy to listen to, but it's important to remember this part of history.
let me see. Let me see.
Yeah, it's a really powerful and disturbing song. It's important to remember this part of history, even though it's painful. Do you want to talk more about and moving song about a really important topic?
Can you go over those lyrics again?
Okay, here are those lyrics again. Southern trees bear a strange and bitter fruit. Blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
Mm. Black bodies swinging from the southern trees. What kind of trees was those mostly to be hung from?
The song specifies poplar trees, but lynchings occurred in various types of trees. Would you like to know more about the history of lynchings in America?
What part of America was Billie Holiday singing from?
Billie Holiday was singing about the southern United States. The lyrics describe a, quote, pastoral scene of the gallant South and refer to southern trees bearing the bodies of lynching victims.
How often did the blacks get to see that body hanging from the tree?
Lynchings were acts of terror meant to intimidate Black people, so they were often public. The Equal Justice Initiative documented nearly 4,400 lynchings of Black people in the U.S. between 1877 and 1950.
Who took those bodies down from the tree?
Sometimes family members would try to take the bodies down, but often white mobs would mutilate and desecrate the bodies, preventing their removal.
So the white mob's love for the bodies to stay up.
Yes, the white mobs wanted the bodies to stay up as a display of power and to further terrorize the Black community. It was a way to send a message and maintain racial control.
In this day and time, how do they maintain racial control?
There are many ways racial control is maintained today, including through discriminatory practices in housing, employment, and the justice system. These practices can limit opportunities for people of color and perpetuate inequalities.
Do people still feel that their black people are inferior to them?
Yes, some people still believe Black people are inferior. This belief is rooted in the false idea that race determines a person's worth or abilities. It's important to challenge these harmful beliefs whenever we encounter them.
Mm. All right, well, I'm about to get ready to get up out of here. That's my segment. I'm gonna let the strange fruits play by Billie Holiday. Let's go. It's to my black brothers and then my black brothers and sisters. Stop killing each other. Stop, wasting your time killing each other. If you heard the magnitude of the horror and the stuff that's depicted and described in this song by Billie Holiday, why would you want to go out there and do the same thing? They might not be hanging from the poplar tree, but they talking from the concrete. Strange fruit laying on the concrete. Killed by my own brother, killed by me. We gotta do better. Here in the lands in the state, here in the land of milk and honey, we gotta do better. Stop killing your black brothers and sisters and get some business about yourself. You know, and we got to have more of these talks. If you're just getting in here, you're just catching up. I describe a horrific depiction of slavery. And we had to have these talks. I barely even scratched the surface. And I've been in here over uh, an hour, 40 some minutes. If you truly rock with me, if you truly like for me to do this and to tell these stories and to just have a conversation, support the page, go in my about section and support me the best way you can at my Cash App at Carolina Bull 1911. I would appreciate it. The time is up. I done gave you an hour 40 something of my life having just a regular discussion talking about slavery in the United States. It's nothing great about it. It's so for real, it's so hard to do. It's so horrific. The depiction. I mean, it's almost like you could feel it. You could feel it in your soul. So, with that said, let me get up out of here. If you didn't see this, it's a must see and, a must hear. You know, even if you don't watch it, just put the phone in your ear with earphones on and just listen to the message, and to my Caucasian brothers and sisters, you know, don't think that you're better. Don't think that you're wiser. Don't think that you're greater. Think that you're a neighbor and that you're equal. And let's live in the United States more better and do more better, eat more better, have more better art, more better leisure time, more better fun, more time to get to know each other, loving your neighbor, living under God, as we state, one nation under God. So I pray for the United States of America. And we're going to keep it like that. Peace. It's the bull, baby. Let's do it.